So let's just take that right there. I don't know if anyone have a chance to see the movie War Dogs.
I have not.
Yeah. So Terrence, can you just um, Wesley, can you just share with us? Let me just go from the beginning and go back over here. So this is the article that I saw and I read about Wesley, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I was so impressed by reading the article, Wesley. I had to have you on board.
Yeah.
To some of the people that I know and the clients that are in the class that I'm having, to really just let them know about your background and how you get started. But before we jump right into why we're here in the interview, I want to always give a disclaimer that the information that we're sharing is for informational purposes only. You know, you still have to do your due diligence. You know, we're not accountants or lawyers, and this is nowhere any type of legal advice. Okay. So let's just start off with some positive affirmations. This is the wrong one. For those of you that know me, the affirmation that for this particular one is I am going to win contracts, I enjoy learning, and I am helpful. Okay, so this is one of the things that we always say in the 1322 challenge, Wesley, that I have. And this is some information about Wesley. He's 16 years old, right? He's the owner of North Star Dynamics, and that is also on Instagram. So I'll share that with you so you could go ahead and you could follow his company as well. And I really like this quote that Wesley, that you had in the article. We've given a long life to not hold back on our dreams and to try again and again until we get things right. Live your dreams and take a risk. Never let waiting become a habit. Life is happening now. And I think that is so relevant for what's going on right now. Even this pandemic, you know, contracts are still being awarded, and RFPs and bids are still being advertised. So definitely take that risk and continue to live your life and live your dream. So without further ado, I want you guys to welcome Wesley Ross with us. And it's going to be a lot like a Q&A. So Wesley, just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and how you got started in this government contracting.
Yeah, so to kind of give you a background on me, I'm 16 years old. I'm originally born in Atlanta, Georgia. I live in Woodbury, Minnesota now. And I got started in the contracts back in July of 2019 as kind of a way of, I wanted to expand my whole entrepreneurship role. And kind of move into something a lot bigger. And after seeing War Dogs, it was kind of my way of catching on to a new way of moving on to something. I've been doing the contracts to date. I run 2 other companies, Speed Labs, which is an automotive accessories company, and I'm working on a electric motorcycle startup called Phantom Motorcycles.
Awesome. So when you started with the government contract, in the article, it said that you won a contract for $115,000. Like, what made you decide to, one, take the initiative to apply for that? What was the process like for you? And how do you go about winning that type of contract?
Yeah, so the reason I had went into it is because I mostly focus on food contracts, but for prisons and things like that, but they only come around every 3-ish or 4-ish months. And so I really wanted to bring in more money and profit, and I saw this contract as a way to do it. It was for a couple tons of gravel, and for me, it was something I've never done before, but I knew if I really tried hard enough, I could. So I did a lot of research, kind of searching around to find a company that could supply the gravel and wouldn't mind working with me on it. And I drafted a teaming agreement, got all that done, got the quote in, and I was right just below the next company, but it was something that I knew I could do if I just put my time into it. Definitely the biggest I've done so far. I hope to do bigger ones eventually, but it was hard. It was really hard kind of just doing all that research and getting everything together and kind of just managing everything and make sure that it all goes right. But once it was done, it felt really good, and it really brought in that extra money that I was trying to bring in.
So when you say research, can you just walk us through what that would look like for you? Like, you saw the actual solicitation, and did you read it through first? Did you just automatically go find a supplier? Like, what does research look like when you started?
Yeah, so usually once a contract is posted for pretty much anything, I'll first see what the item is they're looking for. So if it's 5,000 pounds of black beans, I'll first find a black bean supplier, and then from there I'll move on to actually reading through the like once I find a supplier that I know is providing it for cheap, I'll then go through the rest of the contract, kind of see what the rest of the terms are, things that they need, things like that, just to make sure the supplier can do it. So it's kind of like a checklist. I'll find a supplier, and then I'll just go through a quick checklist. Oh, they do this, they do that, they meet this, perfect. And then I'll contact them, get a quote, and then after that, I submit the quote, win the contract, hopefully, and then from there, I just move it along.
Do you have any strategies in terms of the actual amount? Like, how did you know to do the 115 and not $250,000? Like, how did you come up with that figure?
Yeah, so I tend to go for one third of one or one fourth of the actual cost price. So I try to add on like a fourth of that price. And that's kind of usually my thing is I like to bring back either a third of the fourth percentage. There'll be people who try to double it, triple it, things like that. But I know personally for me, I mean, since I'm not really an adult, I'm not really like paying as high on like bills and things like that. So it's easier for me if I want to just take a third. I mean, I know that sounds pretty low, but I mean, if you're looking at a $115,000 contract, if you're just adding on a little third as their profit, I mean, that's nothing too bad.
Okay. And so now with the government, they issue the purchase orders once you win the contract. And typically for the terms for purchase orders, net 30 is like 30 days from the date of, providing the good or service, then you get paid. Did you have that experience with that particular contract?
Yeah, so that one was under the whole purchase order thing, and I hated that just because I'm really impatient when it comes to money. But once it was paid through, I was happy with it. But that's why I tend to kind of stick with the smaller contracts, just because they use the purchase cards. Because I hate waiting so long for my money.
Now, in terms of when you submitted the bid, did they ever have to meet with you and talk to you? Like, did they know that you were 16 years old?
Yeah, no, they never knew I was 16 years old.
Now, when it came down to capital, when you actually, how did that work with the 115,000? Because you have to have the money in order to pay the vendors or your supplier. So
Yeah,
did you
so
have help with that? Or
yeah, I have a buddy in Georgia. He's 35 years old, and we kind of worked together in this one. He supplied the money for it, and in return, I cut him a profit of the. It was like a 60-40 split, but um, he was pretty much kind of the only reason I could really do the contract is because I didn't have the money to do that. But he said he would front the money, and I would just cut the profit with him. But I've done that on a few contracts in the past where it's someone will front the money for me, and I just cut the profit with them, just because I'll do contracts that are really large that I would have no way of doing myself.
so you watched the movie War Dogs. Was like, I could do this. Was that
Yeah,
the drive?
yeah, it's definitely probably the only reason I really know about like military contracts. Um, there was the whole Nicolas Cage movie called like Lord of War, and that was a really good movie. But it was kind of I was like 10 years old when I saw it, and I didn't really know what contracts were. But seeing War Dogs is really what like kind of gave me that light on contracts and the capability and kind of what it could lead to if you really stick with it and find your way in the contracting world.
Awesome. So when you're not responding to bids, like what are some of the other things that you enjoy doing?
Yeah, so I'm a really big car enthusiast. I spend a lot of days and nights kind of at shows, meets. I like to do a little bit of underground racing, but you didn't hear that from me. Um, I love to read. I absolutely love anything kind of like old like war books, things like that. Love to read those. I spend a lot of time just kind of going through history lessons, things like that. Like I love to explore and kind of the history lessons you don't really like to learn about. Um, I do a lot of online gaming. Kind of my it's kind of my big distraction from contracting. I wish I didn't spend as much time doing it, but it's something I do a lot. And yeah, I mean that's probably most of it.
So I'm going to take some questions to, or one more question I had to ask you. In terms of school, how do you handle finding these opportunities? Do you have a team of people working with you and helping you along the way?
So I do have two students that I employ from the high school, but they kind of handle the marketing side of things for the company. So once I started selling PP and things like that to the public, they were the ones who kind of focused on marketing that out towards the rest of the country. But in terms of finding the contracts, I usually spend only like 2 to 3 hours a day actually looking for them. And then so I like to do that in the morning before I wake up because I usually wake up at around 5:30, 6 o'clock, and my school doesn't start until 8:30. So I like to spend that early morning kind of searching through the contracts from the previous day. And then once I'm out of school, I do my homework, and then I'll spend maybe from like 9 to like 12 o'clock actually working on finding those suppliers, things like that. But it's hard sometimes managing school because I want to do business stuff and I'm like, oh my gosh, like money, 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 let's go do that. The whole side of let's slow down, get good grades, pass high school.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Wesley they would like to ask? So when you search for suppliers, is there a go-to source that you use, or do you do Google, or do you pay for any type of special list?
Yeah, so most of the time when I'm trying to find suppliers, I usually just go through Google. And I mean, I'll go through pretty much every single page of whatever I could find. Like if there's 25 pages of bean suppliers, well, I'm gonna sit there and go through all 25.
Awesome. Okay, let me just check the chat
Okay.
if I have any questions. If you have any questions, you could always unmute.
And was this your first time bidding, or have you
For
had?
the 115,000 contract?
Yeah, yeah.
No. My first ever contract was for canned vegetables for a prison in Oklahoma. It was a lot smaller than that, but that one was I actually did that back in like January, February, the gravel one, but yeah, my first one was in August.
Okay. And when you were doing this particular bid, what would you say besides, I guess, finding the suppliers, right? That's always the key, finding the suppliers that are at the right price, that are reliable. What else would you say would have been your major challenge or obstacle in getting through?
Um, a lot of times, kind of getting companies to work with you can be really hard and agreeing on an actual payment term. Um, because you'll have companies or in my case, people that I work with in order to actually front that money. And, you know, I have to make this teaming agreement with the actual supplier and then I have to make some type of agreement with the actual person who's fronting the money. And it can be really hard kind of just mitigating like who's actually doing what and who's responsible for what. Um, but when it comes to bidding and winning it, I would say persistency is something that's really, really key just because, I mean, you have companies all over the country who have the possibility of bidding on these contracts. You never know
Yeah.
how many or how few they're actually on them. So it really comes down to you have to make sure that you find your absolute like ace player who you know is going to beat out everyone else and still bring you that money back.
Yeah, yeah, that's important. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions? So I saw that your company is also certified. How did you find out about the certifications and why was it important for you to get your company certified?
Yeah, so are you talking about the SBA
Yeah.
certification?
Yes, and the minority, yes.
Yeah. So I know for a lot of contracts that they actually tend to look for minority-owned groups or small businesses and things like that. Um, and I know that having that SBA registration and certification really helps with the contracts and just business in general. And it's nothing too hard. I mean, it took 3, 4 days to get certified, but it really helps out when the contracting officers are looking at who's bidding to know, oh, well, here's this small minority-owned business, and we have to reach this quota. So I think it's 25% are required to go to small businesses. So it really helps them meet that quota of here we go, here's a company that we can send it to. Um, And so that it really helps out a lot just having that SBA certification.
So when you had to hire your staff to help you when marketing, right, marketing your goods, how did you decide that those two individuals were the people you want to hire? Like, what was that vetting process like for you?
Yeah, so one of the girls I previously worked with on the Speed Labs company, and she was a really key player in kind of the sales for that. So I already knew the moment I needed someone else that I would just have her fill that role. Um, and the other one, we had taken this like marketing class thing together, and she really excelled in it a lot more than a lot of other students in the class. And we were already good friends before it started. So I kind of said, hey, like I want to give you this opportunity. Kind of just show me like what you would do, how you would do it, and take it from there. And I gave her, I put it to a test. I gave her 1 week to, I think it was 1 week to get 15 orders under her like responsible. There had to be 15 orders that were responsible because of her. And I mean, she excelled in it. I think there was like 22 orders that week that happened because of her. And after that, I just knew she could stay.
Awesome. So what do your teachers think about you competing for contracts? Do they know about that aspect of that you do, your business?
Yeah, so a lot of them do know about it. Um, a few of them are really supportive of it, like, oh, like good job, like, keep doing that. I feel like a lot of them don't really understand or know what I do. So when I kind of say like, hey, I'm doing these contracts, they're like, oh, that's cool. And I feel like there's also a side of like, you can't really believe, like they're like a little bit of disbelief because it's a 16-year-old in high school, like, oh, he's not doing that. But there's been quite a few who are really supportive, and there's also been quite a few who are like, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. You should focus on school and do this and do that, and worry about that later." And I try to explain to them all the time that the only reason I do it now is because I don't want to do it later.
Right. So who inspires you? Like, what role did your parents play? Because you're a very intelligent young man, and just have that foresight to apply for this bid, to actually register your company. I mean, there's some adults that have never registered their companies but are doing it on the side, but you took it a step further. Like, what was your inspiration?
Yeah, so my inspiration was I I've worked a lot over the past few years to kind of build a name for myself, and I I have a friend. He runs his own company over in Wisconsin, but we had met back last year over the summer at one of my car shows, and at the time I was running this whole small speed lab company and things like that. But he lives a very luxurious life and does a lot of cool, crazy things. And I mean, he's really young. He's 28 years old, and I mean, his company does like $5 million in profit like every 3 months. I can't remember what the numbers were, but he kind of showed me that there's so much to do at an early age, and he was kind of the driving factor in me moving to the next level in the business world and actually chasing big dreams and goals, because I was really content with the whole Speed Labs thing, and I was like, oh, I mean, it's bringing in a decent amount of money. But after being around him, you know, he's taught me a lot. And I mean, this guy, he's paid off his mom's house. He helps provide for his parents, his friends, his employees. And I mean, he really enjoys like just being out and living life and kind of having that freedom. And I knew that's kind of something that I wanted to do personally, but I knew I couldn't achieve it with the Speed Lab. So we sit down, we talk, and he kind of gives me, a little bit of mentorship on kind of his life and business and things like that. But what drives me is really just kind of chasing my dreams, following my goals. And I mean, I have so many more projects that I want to work on in the future. And kind of just knowing that I have him pushing me along every day to kind of get to that goal of where I can provide for my mom, provide for my little sister, and kind of provide for myself before I'm, kind of an older adult. It's kind of just that fact of like, I could really make it if I really put my mind to it.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, what role does your mom play in your company?
Yeah, so she's the stubborn one whenever I do my contracts. She knows about what I do, and she tends to kind of stay out of it. just because she's like, that's your thing, you do it. But there will be times where, you know, I need her to answer the phone for me, or I need her to email someone for me, and she'll she'll be like so happy, so excited to talk to people, do things like that. And I mean, she pushes me along every day to do better and be better. But for the most part, she likes to kind of stay out of it and let me do my own thing. But when it's time for her to be a player in it, she absolutely loves it, and she has fun all the time.
So what are some things you see yourself bidding on in the future? What are some clients?
I I know I definitely wanted to move to the larger kind of weapon and ammunition orders, and also larger food orders, just because those two things are kind of the contracts that I've really focused on. Um, because like right now, I have the capability of winning so many food orders just because the supplier I work with is their products are really cheap in comparison to a lot of companies. But it's the fact of since I'm 16, I can't do the whole line of credit, and I've been trying to kind of build up the equity to do those larger contracts. But in the future, definitely doing the larger food orders that are like $60,000, $70,000 each, and then moving to those weaponry and ammunition orders.
If you had any, what when you pick a supplier, how do you know they're a good supplier? And is the supplier somewhat a supplier that you share with people, or is it something that you keep privately? Like that information is not even shared with the employees type of.
Yeah. So when I can kind of tell a supplier is it after I do my research. And I mean, since I spend so much time kind of going through Google, if I'm looking for a box of bananas and this company does it for $10, this company does it for $12, and this company does it for 13, 9, you know, just kind of like that back and forth. And then, oh, here's this company for $4. That's the one. I like just kind of clear cut. You already know, like that's the one. Um, but once I find that company that I just know in my heart is just obviously going to beat out the rest of the competition, and then I have to make sure they don't do contracts on their own. So that's kind of a big thing to look for, is to make sure that the company you're trying to work with doesn't already do it on its own, because you could be inspiring your own competition in case they haven't seen that contract before, which I've done. Um,
But how would you
and
know that? How would you?
it was a security contract I tried to put together with a friend in Florida who runs a security company. And before I had contacted him about it, I had contacted another security company, and you know, I emailed the order. I kind of talked about working together and things like that. And then I got a call from the actual business owner, and he was like, "Hey, you know, we actually do contracts on our own, but I hadn't seen this one, so thank you." And he's like, "Well, I'm not really looking to work together or anything like that." And it was funny because his company was the one that actually ended up winning it. So I really inspired my own competition on that one.
Wow. Awesome. Just see if anybody else have any more questions. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask?
Before you work with suppliers, right? Because suppliers, I mean, nothing prevents them from bidding on the contract themselves, right?
Yeah.
Do you ever have them sign a non-disclosure, right? Because you know you're working with them, you're sharing your intellectual property with them. Do you have them sign a non-disclosure or a non-compete agreement? Just curious.
So kind of the big thing for me when I do my contracts with suppliers is I tend to look for suppliers that don't really have the whole registration with the government. So since it takes not a long time, but it takes, you know, like a month or two to kind of get everything set up with
Mm-hmm.
DUNS number, cage code, everything like that.
Yeah.
And it's something that not a lot of companies tend to always look to do. Is those will be the companies that I seek out, just because, you know, when I say DUNS number, cage code, they're like, huh? Um, and the companies that I end up work with, I never have like done any type of like legal kind of non-disclosure things like that, but a lot of them really like to work with me just because I have that whole the whole past history under my name. So once they see the North Star Dynamics and they see all of the previous orders, they're like, oh, well, here's a company that I can actually work with. Since, you know, if we start out and do it on our own, we're not going to have anything, so they're not going to really trust us as much. But kind of those two reasons are the really big reasons why I can find a supplier and I have to like say, hey, like, don't compete against me, anything like that, just because a lot of them don't really want to take the time to set up. And a lot of them see that previous history under my name and like, oh, we're fine working with him.
Mhm.
Makes sense. I guess you're essentially opening up avenues for them that they otherwise may not have had or even considered, right? They may not have considered, selling to the government, right?
Yeah.
And I think also having your business certified as well, if they aren't able to get certified, that also gives them an extra incentive. And once you've become established, you've built trust, right, just by who you are. Tell us about like the beginning stages, right, when you were first starting out and you were trying to build that trust. Was it difficult, and how did you overcome some of those challenges?
Yeah, so kind of in the start, it was, I know I had put in bids on a lot of contracts that I had won. Um, and a few had been given to other companies that just had that previous history. Um, and at the time, it kind of was the fact that here's this new company, and all I had at the time was a Gmail email, and
Right.
I wasn't really, I was professional in my emails, but I didn't really come up as like this big company that's done things and things like that. So before I got my first contract, I sat down, I built a nice website. Um, I put together a list of my suppliers, kind of just I to give off the impression, and I got a professional email to kind of just give off the impression of here's North Star Dynamics, this company that has all of these suppliers, works around the country, is capable of doing things. And whenever I would email contractors, I would make sure that this looks super professional, super nice, and gives off that impression of here's a company that okay, so they maybe haven't done a contract yet, but it looks like they've done work with other businesses, things like that. They would go to the website, the contracting officers would go to the website. They would see, here's this company, and kind of all of what I just said, and it would build up that trust of, well, now they kind of give off a more professional look, and oh,
Mm-hmm.
here's just some guy with a Gmail who's just saying, hey, I can get in on this order. It kind of built that trust. And once I had bid on the next order for the canned vegetables, the contracting officer, he was like, I know you haven't done a contract before, but after seeing your website and seeing what you're capable of, I think I want to give you a chance for it. And I mean, at that moment, I knew that kind of doing what I did would really pay off. And I mean, since then, I've had so many contracting officers who's like, oh, we've seen your website and we've kind of seen your past history, and like we see that you're capable of not only doing government contracts, but kind of supplying to other businesses and companies and agencies. So it gives a lot more trust in kind of giving yourself like a touch up and kind of building a website, having a professional email, being super professional and respectful in your emails and things like that.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
So I have one other question. Are all your suppliers based in the US?
Yeah. So all of my suppliers are based in the US. I have had a previous order. It was on like I don't remember the number. It was like close to 100 iPads, and it had come from a factory in China, but it was manufactured in the United States, and it was like this whole like debacle of some parts were manufactured here, some parts were put together here, and it kind of came together in China, and they were storing it there, and that was the only contract I've done where products came from abroad. But I like to stay with the United States just because shipping time is faster, there's a lot more communication, and it's a lot easier getting the money from myself to the supplier.
Thank you. Sterling, you had a question? So Sterling is my 9-year-old daughter. I'm like, listen, he's 16 years old with contracts. You're going to get on and you're going to listen. So she has a question to ask. Go ahead, Sterling. Ask your question. You're
Have you
brave.
ever invested in a kid-owned business?
Could you repeat that one for me?
Repeat that, Sterling.
Have you ever invested in a kid-owned business?
I did a long time ago. It was a buddy, and he was starting a lawn mowing company. And he had like $60, which, I mean, you could get like boots and maybe like a vest, but I had supplied him with 2 lawnmowers and a weed whacker, and the kind of the term we went on was, I'll give you the lawnmower and the weed whacker, and over time, you kind of pay me back just a little bit more. Um, and I got the investment back on the supplies, and he paid me back like extra like $200, but I don't think he does it anymore. I think it kind of flopped over and he gave up. And I think he sold a lawnmower and things like that. But I'm not against investing in kid-owned companies just because I want to see everyone kind of grow and do great things with their life. So I mean, anytime people have like I've had people ask me all the time like, hey, I want to do this and I want to do that, and I'm always open to like hear about investing into someone's company, but I I never always say yes just because I have to make sure it's someone I can actually like trust and some way I'll get like an investment and return back on it. But yeah, I've definitely invested in other people's or kids' companies before.
Excellent. Thank you. So where do you see yourself in 5 years? You're in high school now, and
Yeah.
with more companies eventually. And what are your plans?
So I'm working on the whole contracts and things like that. But currently I'm working on a project for an electric motorcycle. And I mean, the plan for this is I want to take this a lot higher than the contracts could ever go for me. And it's actually I was hoping to have it done before the end of the year, but in the next 4 year or next 5 years, I see myself, you know, just really kind of living the whole uppity lifestyle. Like I mean, it kind of sounds bad, but it's kind of going from where I started off as a kid to kind of getting to that point has always been the goal. And I always tell my mom I'm gonna be the next millionaire before 18. So hopefully I can reach that target. But I I see myself in 5 years doing a lot bigger contracts. Hopefully maybe a couple other companies. I don't know. I'd like to do my research to kind of see where the market and industries are going. But 5 years, I want to see myself at the top. Not like the top, like not like Jeff Bezos level, but somewhere just up there in the top with the rest of the group.
Hey, it's possible, right? He started in his garage. So
Yeah.
speak what you want in existence. You could far more exceed Jeff Bezos, so definitely that's great. That's good to hear. So I am getting some other questions on the chat. The next question that came in was, when it comes to investing or partnering with someone, do you seek guidance from a lawyer?
I've never got any type of guidance from a lawyer, things like that. And usually when I work with people, I just kind of draft up a quick contract from Law Depot. It's like a website. And I mean, you kind of just fill in the blanks. It'll ask you questions like, what state, who's doing this, who's doing that. And you fill in the blanks, and it'll do a full-fledged contract for you, and it'll be done in like 20, 25 minutes. And, I sign it, they sign it, or I read it, they read it, then we sign it. And then from there, we kind of just work together. But I've never had any time where I've like needed a lawyer or anything like that.
Okay. So when you sign the agreement, is that the agreement between you and the supplier, or you and the business partner, the one with the?
Me and the business partner.
Okay.
And I have had a few with the supplier just for the teaming agreements, saying that we're going to work together on them. But in terms of like splitting profits and things like that, it's usually me and the business partner.
Okay. Awesome. Anyone else have any more questions? Also consider writing a book, Wesley. I mean,
Yeah,
you're a
I
great
wanted
speaker.
to. Thank you.
You're welcome. One last question that came in. If you don't mind, what are the names of some of the websites that you use?
For
Or
the
there was one for law. I think you said law
yeah.
code.
So Law Depot is where I go for teaming agreements and contracts. Um, or I mean, you could find any type of like legal document you need. I mean, if you want to start an LLC, if you want to register a corporation, if you want to hire someone, um, just any type of legal document you'll ever need, Law Depot really does it well. It's kind of like a fill in the blank. Like they'll just ask you, 15 to 40 questions. You kind of just fill it in, and then, once you're done, boom, here's a whole entire document ready for you to print, sign, and things like that. So they're really good with that. I absolutely love them to death. And a lot of their documents are free. Some are like $10, $15 charge. Um, and then another website that I use is Unison. Unison Marketplace is where I go for all of my contracts. I know a lot of people like to use beta.sam. Um,
So
but
you
I hate using beta.sam. I absolutely love Unison. So I think it's like Unison dot marketplace, and I feel like if you put it into like the search tab, if you put in like Unison Marketplace or like Unison Global, that should come up, and that's where I go for all of mine, just because you have a really big range of small, medium, and large contracts, other than the Sam dot beta, where it's a lot of really, really big ones, or there's that whole 30-day payment term with a lot of them.
okay? Now, do you also focus on contracts that are local in your state and county and cities, or do you only do federal contracts?
So I usually fulfill federal. Um, I a long time ago I tried to do one for the state. It was a federal one, but it was for the state. I didn't win it, but I wouldn't mind doing state contracts. It's definitely something I need to get set up with. Um, I know there's like a whole other process of like actually setting up with the state. And I had someone contact me like a week ago about doing it. I completely forgot about it. But selling to the state and kind of locally, something I wouldn't mind doing, but this is something I haven't like set up for yet.
You've been awesome. Everyone sending me these messages like, oh, this is great. Okay, let me see. Unison. So it's Unison, Unison?
Mhm.
Okay, yes. Awesome. Thank you. Any more questions? What are we doing on time? Well, we're good on time. We have like another 15 minutes. This is the moment to ask someone who's competed for contracts, won contracts, you know. So did you win the first time you did a contract, the first time you actually responded to one?
No, no, I lost really big. Because I thought I could get away with kind of dragging on a lot of profit. And I don't remember specifically what the contract was for, but I think I tried to like triple the contract in profit. Like I believe the contract was like $3,000 in costs, and I was trying to make like 12,000 back in profit, or not 12,000. I think I was going for like 8,500 in profit, which was, I mean, that's way more than the actual contract itself. So yeah, I mean, I lost by a lot on that one, but I think I lost out on maybe like 12 to 13 contracts before I actually won one. And since then, I have like a 70% win, 30% fail on it.
But what made you keep going back? Because oftentimes people are like, well, you guarantee that I'm going to win a contract, you know? But you did not win some in the beginning, but you kept on trying anyway.
Yeah.
What was that drive? Like that you just never gave up.
Yeah. So kind of is going off the whole persistency thing. Like if you are persistent, you will find success with contracts. And that's kind of been what a lot of people who like done them have told me is like just if you stay persistent, you'll win. And I mean, it really hurt, kind of losing over and over and over and over again. But I knew that if if I would put in that time, do that research, and find that right company, that eventually I would win. And that's kind of what happened.
Just checking to see if any more questions. Anyone else have any other questions? What about RFPs? Have you considered responding to like an RFP?
I haven't yet. Um, Actually, I should look into those, but not yet.
Okay. I'm just checking the chat. Mm, so far, so good. Does anyone else have any questions they'd like to ask? All right. Well, thank you so much, Wesley. Is there anything you want to leave us with before you, like, how can we find you? How can we contact with your website, your Instagram, your Facebook?
Yeah, so kind of a way to contact me or find me is, all right, so website is nsdusa.us. And then on there you'll find that the website email is sales@nsdusa.us, but I checked that one kinda, not a lot though. I should check that one a lot more. The best way to contact me is my personal email, which is wesleyross.work@gmail.com, or on Instagram DMs. My personal Instagram is Wesley_.Ross, and then my business one is North Star Dynamics.
Thank you. Any charities that you support?
So I don't know if this is kind of a charity or not, but a big program that I'm really into and really support is called Youth in Government. So it's kind of a nationwide thing, and they have local kind of state chapters, and it's kind of replicating your state government. It's for teenagers, and so 8th through 12th grade. You'll go through the program, and it's a way of replicating your state government for a few days, and it really inspires young minds to kind of take on that government leadership role. And so it's a program I really support, and I know it's through the YMCA. I know they're always looking for donations and things like that to kind of help facilitate the cost and things. So I don't know if it's technically a charity, but it's definitely a program that I support and I donate to every year.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much, Wesley. I do appreciate the time that you shared with us. You're giving us some really good information and definitely inspiring everyone. Look, you got a thumbs up. So you're inspiring my 9-year-old daughter. She better start competing for these contracts. So thank you so much. And I definitely will follow you on Instagram and to see your progress. You could always check back in, for any questions or anything like that. And I wish you all the best.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
All right, take care. Bye.
Thanks, Denise. Thanks for
Thank you.
organizing. Thanks, Wesley. Okay. Bye.